Ladies and gentlemen, big Herald News.
Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewie.
And kia ora, Pat.
How are you, love? What's going on? Anything exciting in your world?
I am fucking freezing. I just realised. It is clear skies down here and very, very cold.
My favourite days. My favourite days.
So yeah, it's nice.
A clear, crisp Dunedin winter day. They're my faves.
I'm not going to complain about not having the pissy, cold, misty shit we had last week, but it's a wee bit nippy. Just a little bit.
Hey, we've got a guest who's already waiting with us, so we're going to get to that very, very quickly. But just before we do that, what's happening tonight? Well, we're going to talk about David Seymour on school absences. We want to talk a bit about the 3 strikes law, which has been enacted. You know, can I be honest with you? For the first time ever.
Go on, then.
I'm feeling vulnerable, being honest. No, I'm just kidding. I saw that news story come out today about the 3 strikes law, and I went, oh, leading the news. Big story, big story. Nothing on news, nothing on, not one news, nothing on 3 news. And so, because sometimes when we have to kind of get a show ready, we kind of project what's going to be a big story. It's like the news media's gone, oh, yeah, we did that 3 years ago. We don't need to do that again now. And so we're going to talk about it, but there's not a lot. Well, there's no video to show you guys about the 3 strike, which really, really, really surprises me. And the other thing, Chewie, although, sorry, I should probably be fair and go, the thing that's probably pushed it off the thing is Iran and Israel. So, you know, okay. Probably fair.
Isn't that particular, like, I mean, it's horrible and cold-blooded. I feel like a lizard for just putting this out there. Isn't it convenient how this one little kerfuffle in the Middle East has wiped away so many inconvenient stories for various people around the world?
Yeah, what about Trump today? Tweeting out, everyone evacuate Tehran right now. So what are you doing?
Just a casual mackerel. 9 million people just get up and go. Yeah, okay. So we've stopped talking about Elon and Trump and the Epstein list.
Yep.
Globally, apparently, we're not worried about Gaza anymore. In fact, I saw someone unironically say on social media, at least the Gazans are getting a reprieve. No, they're not. They're still starving. There's still no food coming in. They're still being
dying.
Bombed and drone striked and all of that sort of thing. But suddenly, the news cycle is injected with wailing Israelis going, what have we done to deserve this?
Well, do you know
it
something?
Is crazy.
Here's something I thought today, right? I mean, look, we've got Malcolm waiting, so we've got to go. But here's one thought before we come back to it, is that, you know how so many people would say that the current conflict between Israel and Gaza, conflict with parentheses around it, started on October 7th. Like that's what people would say, right? And what Israel is saying is they're blaming Hamas for that. And they're saying that's where it started. Well, so that therefore means logic that the current conflict between Israel and Iran was started by Israel on the day they sent those missiles. Surely we have to be, if they're going to go down that path, they've got to be logical. Surely. So.
I mean, I am no fan of the Iranian regime.
Of course.
But if we want to talk about a Middle Eastern country with nuclear weapons that seems to be a little bit heavy on the old trigger finger, it's not Iran.
Okay. Yes. Now, one other thing, super quick, very exciting. On Thursday of this week, I believe there are going to be 3 live streams during the day. The GDP numbers come out first thing in the morning, and Craig Rennie is probably going to do a locked out live stream at 10:45 in the morning. on the immediate numbers. Craig will then join us again that evening for a bit more of a lowdown. Then, of course, the second broadcast will be BHN at 9 o'clock, and the third broadcast, you guys might be quite excited about this. We are going to have a guest host of a BHN show. We have
I've been replaced.
Tanya Waikato with a couple of guests, and I'm not going to release the guests just yet because we're waiting for one confirmation, but Tanya Waikato, lawyer for Te Pāti Māori, is going to be hosting BHN at 6 p.m. to do a regulatory standards special. 6 p.m. Thursday night. Yes, that is the correct face, Chewie.
So if you've got people that are sitting on the fence and
Yep.
don't understand what the RSB is about and why everyone's
Yep.
got their knickers in a twist and should they
Yep.
care about it and should they do something about it, you now have some hours, can't do the math in my head, to tell people to watch this thing and maybe
45.
be there to help them do the submission with them.
Yeah.
Make a party of it. I don't know. Have
So-
some snacks.
6 p.m. live streamed Thursday night. Tanya will host it. She's got two guests, two academics with her, one from Victoria, one from Otago, talking about the regulatory standards bill. I'm just not saying the guest because we're waiting on one confirmation. That's the only reason. It'll probably be out tonight. Like I'll probably set the link up and it'll be live on the YouTube channel tonight. Talking regulatory standards a couple of days before you got to finish getting your submissions in. Thursday night, 6 p.m. Right. That's it for now.
I've just done the math, Pat. If Tanya's hosting it, and she's got some high-powered people coming on to be on it,
Yeah.
that special is both much, much smarter and much, much better looking than the standard edition BHN show.
That's why we're not doing it. Yeah, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing it. So
No,
6
that
p.m.
makes sense.
Thursday night. Put it in your diaries. All right. We talked a little bit about the rich list and stuff. I think it was last week it came out. NBR released its rich list information. And Chewie, the $20 billion, that's the Mowbray brothers, right? That's so much money that I just said to our guest that when we talked about the rich list, we said they could spend $1 million a day for the next 54 years and still have money left if they earn not one more cent. And even I went, no, that's not right. That's too much money. Those numbers, I must have got that wrong. No, it is indeed. It's actually the correct numbers. So even me, I did those numbers last week, and I've just said right here, right now, no, that doesn't sound plausible. It's plausible. That's what it is.
I saw people come into your mentions on that one going, no, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, it is.
Yeah.
Like several times that happened.
Yeah.
Because
that's the point.
$1 billion is such an unfathomable number. Like when you actually sit down and think about it, the B is for a bigger millionaire. No, it's more than that. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a
more than
millionaire.
That. It's an obscene number.
Yeah. So we have a guest with us, someone who we were introduced to, at least online last year when we found the sharing wealth movement in New Zealand. I believe it's high net worth individuals in New Zealand saying that we should pay more tax. Who do we talk to about that? Did we talk to Philip Mills about that? I think we might have talked to Philip Mills about that and some other people. Someone else on the list whose name we saw at the time was the co-founder of the ecostore, Malcolm Rands. Malcolm joins us right now. Kia ora, sir. Welcome to the show.
Kia ora. Lovely to be here, boys.
Good to have you here.
Can we just, we're here to talk about, billionaires, the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, and happy to talk about tax as well. But could we just do a little bit of a 5-minute history into you, first of all, for the whānau watching? You are a co-founder with your wife of ecostore. How did that all come about?
Correct. Well, you can get the book. So I'll have to do a very quick summary of it. But basically, I had, in my not-for-profit work, I had a bit of a horrible thing happen to me. My best ever venture was stripped away from me, and I thought this is never going to happen again. So I spent a whole year going deep and dark and thinking, what do I know? And most importantly, what stops me? And I came up with a mind map for a ethical business whose ecostore, whose purpose in the end is to fund a foundation, the Fairground Foundation. So in '93, I started that, and off I went.
So basically, you made a way that you could generate income to support other work you were doing, as opposed to just supporting yourself and keeping it all in the bank, so to speak.
Yes, and in fact, yeah, I never particularly wanted to be that rich myself, because it's actually a very dangerous thing to be rich. The old power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You see it. I've seen it among people I know, and it's sad. So I'd rather just be sort of comfortable, but not super rich. But having said that, I am comfortable, and I'm more comfortable than most people in New Zealand, I'm sure. I'm not sort of underplaying that. And I'm very happy that I would like to pay more tax. I don't think I'm paying enough tax.
Shall we start there, Chewie? Because as I just said in the introduction, I mean, actually, our first introduction to you was using ecostore products, but unwittingly to you.
Thank you.
And then the actual first introduction to your name came out when we did some bits and pieces on the open letter on tax, which, long story short, pardon me, is to the government saying, you know, those of us with a few extra pingers, we could pay a bit more. Is that a fair synopsis of what it was?
It's funny, you know, it was so well received, you know, like I thought, some of my rich mates are going to have a crack at me, but they didn't, you know, they didn't. In fact, there's a lot of consensus out there that we do need to pay more tax. And it's not just for social programs, but for example, I mean, climate change is coming. And it's going to take all sorts of infrastructure, and there's so much we need to do. Where's that money come from? Where's it come from? You know, and who's got money? And it's not the middle class. It's certainly not the working families. They haven't got any money. The only people who've got a bit of spare dosh are the well-to-do. So I think we should be putting a bit more in the pot so that New Zealand can be a better place for us all to live.
Cool. Hey, let's set a framework if we can. What do you think you need, a human being needs, to be considered rich? Like, if we talk about the rich listers, obviously that's the top of the echelon. At what point do you think you become a normie? Is there like an idea? Is it less tangible, like, well, I can afford to pay my bills? Or is there a mark that when you're thinking about paying more tax, you hit?
Well, I think if you don't spend a lot of time thinking, can I pay my bills? And I did that for a long time. I mean, I started ecostore with no money. We were very poor when we started it. We were, believe it or not, we were living a family of four on $20,000 a year. If we went on the dole, we had an improvement. So you know, we weren't rich, but we were doing something called voluntary simplicity. You find out these names after you've done it, and that means we swapped money for time. And so therefore, when our kids between the age of 0 and 10, they had 1.5 parents at home all the time, because just Melanie or I could work 20 hours a week and we could support our family. I mean, we did have a garden. We did have one of the most beautiful beaches in the world at the bottom of our road, which is such a great babysitter. So, I mean, we had it pretty sweet, you know, and we had no mortgage because I'd been lucky enough to get in early on the Auckland housing market. And when we sold that, I could come into the eco village and build a house without a mortgage. So we were pretty sweet in that way, but we had no capital. So out of the blue, and he didn't know what I was doing, my brother rang me up one day and he said, I don't know if you've ever needed any money to start, Malcolm, but I'm flush at the moment. And he didn't even know that I was working on this business plan. It just came completely out of the blue. And so we started ecostore with $20,000, believe it or not.
Wow, that's a pretty nice. That's a nice phone call to have, isn't it? Hey, would you like some cash? I've got some. That's a good. I hope my siblings are listening. Chewie, got any questions around the origin story?
I know,
and stuff?
and it's never happened before or after. But he's a lovely, generous guy, my brother. So and I owe a lot to him. So he's a great guy.
I actually didn't know any of that story. I came into this interview blind, but I can tell you that my kitchen and laundry are full of ecostore products. Yeah. So good job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I mean, when I started in '93, believe it or not, it was still Gordon Gecko. Greed is good. You had to be a bit of an asshole to be successful in business. There was everything around me, and here I was trying to sell plant-based dishwashing liquid to the masses by mail order. Crazy boy, but we got there in the end.
We were talking about what a horrible environment the 90s were. Just generally, we had looking at an interview Ruth Richardson did last night. So I think that all ties together, that business was hard and the government was hard, and I guess the people of New Zealand society were caught in a thresher at that stage. So it's nice to hear that someone had an idea to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, everyone thought I was completely crazy because there was no eco products at all in the supermarkets at that stage. Nothing. So, and that was really, that made the difference, was getting into the supermarkets, and then getting into the supermarkets in Australia. That's what really made us just rock and roll. And after that, look out world. So now we're actually in Japan, China, all over the place.
Wow. It's interesting to think of a time where there was zero focus on eco anything within our supermarkets. That sounds like a completely literal different time.
It does, doesn't it? I know.
Yeah.
It was.
Hey, before we go on to the rich list, etc., can we just go full circle on what you're doing? Can you explain to us what Fairground is, what you guys do there? So we know that ecostore is sort of an incubator for cash to do other things like Fairground. What do you guys do there? What's it all about?
Well, again, it seems my environment, community seems to be my two main things that I'm focusing on. And that's the mind map I came up with. And if you want to go scroll down again, that's the mind map I came up with in '93. And we're still on target for that. So the two projects we've got at the moment, one is, as you can see on my T-shirt, is Bucket. And that is a new way to make supporting the literally tens and tens of thousands of everyday Kiwis who are out in the New Zealand bush, looking after predators, planting, looking after streams, coastlines, and they don't get any support. I mean, there is support from DOC and big, but that's for big projects. All the small ones, it's a real pain for them, and they shouldn't be really spending their time fundraising. They're the sort of people who, they'll say, oh, let's do some fundraising, and they'll put $1,000 in the pot to publicize it, and they'll work for about $2,000 worth of time and make $500. It's just ridiculous. They shouldn't be doing that. So we've got this new app coming out where suddenly you can find these people. You'll see the people. You'll see the projects they're doing. You can choose what you like, whether it's kiwis or penguins or your backyard, and you go right in. You'll meet the people, and they'll put up projects we're going to do, and you'll see a project. Oh, I like that project. So you'll know exactly what you're supporting. Yes, I want to support that project. And at the same time, it's also, I
was going to say, so is it kind of like a pseudo social media where people will connect on it to do these tasks, or is it like a fundraiser where people will connect virtually, go, I like what you're doing, here's $20, or is it both?
Exactly. The groups are out there already, but people don't know about them. So we're making it easy to become almost a part of their group, because you'll see the people, you'll see their project. But the main thing is if you give to a lot of not-for-profits, you don't know a clue where the money's going to go. The thing with Bucket, you know exactly where your money is going. So you'll get a report back on how effective you were. Okay. So
and the other thing I'm assuming there's going to be like right down into neighborhood type groups, like small community groups that you can literally know exactly where they are and what they're doing. Most of them are small community groups. Yeah, we're not worried about the big projects that much. They get the funding. They're sexy. They actually have a lawyer on their board and blah blah. We're talking about ma and pa here, who don't have any of that. But and writing submissions is just a nightmare, and most of them get turned down. We want to look after these people,
And we're also doing it using Giving Circle technology, and we're also working with Kia, who look after the million New Zealanders who don't live in New Zealand. And we're tapping into that because they love New Zealand and they would like to help what's happening, keep the New Zealand beautiful. They would love to, but they don't know how to do it. So we're going to be tapping into them as well. So that's one project. The other project I'm doing is working on my big thing, which is about community. So I've been living in an eco village now for 40 years. So I know what I'm doing here. And I want to bring the technology of good neighborhoods into the city. And the project is called Bumpspace. It's all about new builds. Suburbs are hopeless. Walk away from a suburb. Don't live in a suburb. Work into you want to live in a medium density, three-story walk-up is my favorite. Like Italy is all three-story walk-ups. And what happens if you live there, the design is so clever that when you're moving around your property, going to your car, going out shopping, going to use the facilities, just accidentally you keep on bumping into your neighbors. It's designed so that you bump into your neighbors. The opposite of the suburbs, where you can sort of never meet your neighbors. And the more you bump into the same people, suddenly, I recognize you. You find out their name. Before you know it, you're looking after their budgie while they go on holiday. And before you know it, you're living in a neighborhood where you belong. That's what I'm aiming for, living in a neighborhood where you feel you belong. And if you look at the problems, health problems on the planet, number one killer of people is loneliness, lack of community. Number one killer. It's also the number one reason for addiction, lack of community. So that's what I'm on to looking. And at the moment, I was going to become a property developer. I'm glad I didn't do that. It'd be a nightmare. But I'm working with existing people and helping meld what they're doing more towards Bumpspacey. The number one person I've worked with in Auckland is a group called Occam, and they're doing wonderful stuff. I've just started working with Simplicity because they're going to be building rentals right through New Zealand. And if they can be neighborhoods, then you won't be worried about vandalizing like a slum, because if you feel you belong there, you're going to look after it. So that's my other project.
And for people to find
I've got
out
a couple of little ones.
Sorry, we've got a bit of a lag here. Yeah, fairground.org. Do you want to mention a couple? You're welcome to mention a couple other things if you want, Malcolm, before we go on to the big talk about billionaires.
No.
A couple other things we want to throw out there?
You'll never shut me up. You better stare me, I think. Otherwise, you'll never shut me up.
All right. Well, that's fairground.org. There's more things up there as well. The About Us, the Bucket, the Bump Space, and a list of past projects and stuff as well that people can find out more about it on. Okay, so let's have a look at this. As somebody who was featured on the Sharing Wealth, one of the signatories to the Sharing Wealth, when you hear stories coming out about the richest in New Zealand increasing their wealth from 95 billion to 110 billion, while the poorest are dropping like 30%, what does that make you think and feel?
I feel, I don't want to sound up myself, but I don't think a lot of these people are very happy, to tell the truth. I think a really, really good article about how come these people who are super wealthy haven't sort of become really, I've got enough and I want to give back, and like Elon the Musk, why are they always turning, some of them actually are turning into greedy psychopaths. I have to say that some of them, I'm not talking about people in New Zealand, but around the world. Why are they doing this? And the analysis is kind of like an addiction. They're like addicts. To get their dopamine, they have to do more and more outrageous things. They can't sit still, and it's actually, they don't, and horribly to bloody get their next dopamine hit, they're going to bloody destroy the whole planet just to keep themselves entertained. It's sort of that, it's not rational anymore. It is not good for anyone to be that rich. It's not good for their own, because what I've found of really rich people is everyone around them turns into sort of like, they lose it. They just want to suck up to them, I have to say. And everyone around them is telling them they're wonderful and they're like a god, everyone. And they start believing it. They start believing it. I've seen that a few times. I mean, having said that, there's some really beautiful rich people out there. I'm not generalizing about everyone, but as a trend, it's sort of quite dangerous to get super rich, I think, and keep your sanity and keep your hands on the ground.
Yeah, but Bill Gates is the exception, not the rule, is he? Elon Musk is the rule and what he wants to do. And if we think about what we said earlier, if someone has $20 billion with the Mowbray brothers, they've got, and obviously it's not $20 billion in cash, but if they liquefied everything and they had $20 billion in the bank, $1 million a day would last them over 54 years. And when you start thinking about that kind of money, and you just go, and Chewie said this last time. Sorry to steal your question, Chewie. If you had someone in front of you, you'd go, "When is enough enough? When have you
Never.
got enough? Like when
Never.
is it enough?"
Never.
Yeah.
That's what we've been shown again and again. It's never enough because it's an addiction. They cannot get enough. And I've seen it. I've actually, I've had partners who are billionaires in the States, and he had so much money, but he kept on, how can I get more? How can I get more? It's just, as I said, if you look at it through the lens of addiction, that's a new one for me. It kind of makes sense. They're not at rest.
Really
they're not peaceful, and they can't trust anyone. Like this guy, my old partner in the States, he rings me up quite a lot because he actually found me and he pulled me into the States with ecostore, right? So I never sold him anything. He grabbed me, and so I didn't owe him anything. And I used to, like a Kiwi, I used to give him shit all the time, right? He had no one else in his life doing that. No one. And because of that, he's stayed a friend because he's got no one else that everyone else tells him he's like a god.
Yeah.
Everyone else around him.
Yes, man. Yeah. Chewie.
Yeah,
of course.
Thinking of it like an addiction, that's a really interesting thought. And I think when you were just saying there, Pat, they end up surrounding themselves with yes men or essentially other addicts. There's no one there that pops their bubble and sort of goes, "Come on, mate.
That's right.
Do you really need more? Do you really need to sit on this mountain of hoarded gold?
That fifth helicopter?
Is this making you happy?" Yeah, it's a really interesting thought.
Yeah,
on
we
the
need to be
list,
sending them all along to AA, you reckon?
Yeah, maybe something. There's a BA, Bugger All Billionaires
10 steps.
Anonymous, something
How
like
many
that.
steps? 12 steps?
Yeah, something like that. On Billionaires, this is what the Prime Minister said after the rich list came out. Isn't it fantastic that we've got people with ambition, aspiration, and positivity, and we should be celebrating success? I know how hard people work in New Zealand, and there are some pretty inspirational stories. As a country, we want people to be able to move themselves from one set of circumstances to a better set of circumstances, and it's okay to celebrate this success. But I just also say to you, of course he had to say, but I'll say to you, even in print, Chewie, but I'll just also say to you that I know New Zealanders are doing it tough, and it's important that we are doing everything we can as a government to create the conditions for growth. That's what we have been doing, and that's what our budget is doing. Unfortunately, I think they're making areas for growth again for the top, whereas the people at the bottom, the vulnerable, are getting, what's the opposite of growth? Crushed. There you go. That actually works well. Are getting crushed is what I'm seeing, Malcolm.
The funny thing is, in the golden years of Western growth, through the 50s and the 60s into the 70s, people at the top were paying 95% tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was our best ever growth. And they're paying 95%. I mean, I got nothing wrong with good business and making things of value and being successful and good on you, if you can do things well but I think that money is built on everyone around you, not just you. And I think it needs to be shared. You need to look after your community where you live. Otherwise, in the end, you're going to end up in a walled compound.
Well,
you have to bring the whole country with you.
You also know that the wealthy money doesn't bring happiness. It may make life easier, but it doesn't bring happiness. And one of the stats that I always pull back from is because suicide rates are basically exactly the same amongst the wealthy as the rest of society. So everyone has the same trials and tribulations and issues and insecurities, and rather than now competing with your neighbor who's also working, in a shop, you're competing with your neighbor who's also got 6 helicopters. It's all the same. I can actually remember moving between radio stations. I used to work for a charity radio station, and I can remember we would complain because management couldn't find $100 for us to do some kind of competition on air. And then I moved and started working for Classic Hits, big, powerful, one of the biggest radio stations. And they were complaining because management wouldn't give them $1,000 to do something on air. It's exactly the same complaints, just different levels of income and different levels of money put at the end of that complaint. But the complaints were exactly the same, Malcolm.
Yeah. And I would actually dispute that. I mean, at a certain level, I agree, having money makes things easier. Of course it does. If you don't have to worry about paying the bills, that's wonderful. If you can do the things that interest you and support your family and things, wonderful. But when you get to another level, it actually starts getting hard again, because you can't trust people. Everyone's after you for something, oh, are they really my friend, or they want something? Even your own family, like people I know, they don't even trust their own bloody wife and kids anymore. It's just awful. So, I mean, I would dispute at a certain point whether it makes your life easier, but it does up to a certain point, 100%.
Yeah.
You don't want to be poor. No one likes being poor. No one. And we need to support people who haven't got enough to give their kids lunches, their Marmite sandwich and the apple. I think we really do need to support those people, 100%.
Okay, Malcolm, just to kind of wrap this thing up then, seeing you've just said that, and we both defer to your expertise in the area of having or not having money, what could this government do to enable more people to at least have the point where they don't have to worry as much about money? Like, I'm thinking about your sharing wealth work. What could this government do, or any government, to make life a little bit easier for the people who are struggling the most at the moment?
I mean, I think I hate to be doom and gloom if we're ending now, but I think if you're looking at the very smart people and AI coming in, suddenly half the people are going to lose their jobs, and that's in the next little while. So I think we're going to have to look at something like the universal wage. We do need. And where that's done, it's worked really well, and people then, if they don't have to worry about, if like the trouble being on the dole is then when you start working, you got that horrible situation where it's better to be on the dole, because if you're working, or you lose all your money. If you just, I mean, the model you want to look at is your retirement money, like you can get that if you're still working. And you don't have to worry about, if you're making money, you're going to lose your superannuation. You don't have to worry about it. I think that's the model to look at. And then once people have got enough money to buy their kids lunch, to bloody put a warm, dry roof over their heads, then they can go out and be entrepreneurial, or they can bloody dig their garden, or they can actually care for their folks. There's so many things they could do if they're not trapped in low-paid jobs. And those jobs are going to go anyhow. So we have to look at something pretty radical. I think the only thing I can see out there is the universal income, and use it like superannuation. I think we've got to go down that way, and hopefully the very rich in New Zealand will help support that.
Because that's the only way UBI works, right? Because a UBI would mean more money needed in the government coffers, and the way they do that at the moment is through taxes and things like wealth tax or capital gains tax. That's pretty much the only way,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it does. Yeah. The people who've got the money need to support the whole community. They really do. Otherwise, they're not going to be living in a country they want to live in the end.
Chewie, I'm going to throw a couple of questions at Malcolm from the super chats. Is there anything you want to ask her before we wrap up?
Yeah, I've had this question rattling around in my head when we've had other wealthy guests on the show talking about, hey, look, we need to look at paying more tax. We've seen the open letter that went around at that time. There's an election next year. What plan, if any, do you have to make this an issue for the parties that want to lead the country for the next term.
I personally think one of the reasons Labor lost is because they didn't have the courage to go for this, because we'd put it out a year before the election and we had amazing support. We had amazing support across the community. It was there to be taken, but they just what I heard is that they thought, well, if we put this out, all the rich people will just dump on us and we'll be toast. And so they didn't put it out, and all the rich people dumped on them and toast anyhow. So
That's so true.
So I think the people on the left have to be brave with tax. They do. They have to be brave.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? Brave with tax, because we've said this for a long time, Malcolm. And look, I won't say that this is an absolute, because there may be some gaps, but normally you find that those legislative changes, those laws that are in place right now that pretty much all New Zealanders hold on to and go, we aren't letting these go, whether it's free education, whether it's the state housing, whether it's free healthcare, whether it's working for families, whether it's interest-free student loans. They're all policies from the left when they've chosen to be brave. There is very little out there that you can think of as an inspirational, massive legislative thing that we all want to hold on to that's come from the other side. So the left needs to be brave to drive this country into a new place. I completely agree with you.
Yep.
There's two quick questions here, if you've got a second. The first one, they're actually both from the same person, from Kiwi Bird. Kiwi says, thoughts on worker co-ops. I thought that might be right up your street, Malcolm. Worker co-ops?
They are tricky, the trouble is humans are humans, and they kind of like to argue, and in our village we've actually gone 40 years as a cooperative, and believe it or not, we've never gone out of complete consensus for all our decisions, but very slow. I wouldn't do it in business. So it depends. If you're like in an entrepreneurial business, I wouldn't go for down the co-op. I'd actually, but if you're in like a service industry, or there's lots of places where we can done it, and I think Montreal and the Basque Company of Spain is an incredible example of. It's been going for about 40 years. A lot of their successful business is cooperative, so it can be done, and there are lessons to be learned out there. But it's not easy. It's tricky. It is tricky.
And the last question before we say goodnight, from Kiwi Bird again, actually. And we've talked a bit about billionaires, but do you have any specific thoughts on Elon Musk?
He's an addict. He is. That's what I'm saying. In drugs as well. Drugs. He's a sex addict. He's a drug addict. He's an excitement addict. He's just out of control. I'm sorry. And it's a shame, because when he first came along with Tesla, I thought, yay, you smart guy. You've made electric cars sexy. That's just what we needed. Good on you. But then when I heard that he wasn't afraid of doing a coup in Bolivia because he wanted the precious metals, I said, oops. And that was about 4 years ago he said that. I thought, no, not my boy anymore. So he lost it for me about 4 years ago.
Hey, Malcolm, thanks so much for giving us some time tonight. We'll let you get back to your family. It feels to me a little bit like you are someone who has a lot to say in this area, so we might have to stay in touch and get you on again sometime soon.
Sure, I'd love to. It's good chatting to you guys. I think probably our problem is we're probably agreeing too much. Next time I want you to get some really snaky, nasty questions for me. I like those ones. Put me on the spot more. You've been too nice to me.
Yeah, Chewie's the snake in the
We will definitely have you back.
What we do is we're just winding you in with a nice conversation.
I love that.
Well, we just wind you in with a nice, gentle, loving conversation. Then next time we'll smash you. Deal?
Okay.
All right, Malcolm.
Okay.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Malcolm Rands, co-founder of ecostore, and a bunch of other things in there as well. Lovely, Chewie. There's a few other chats. We should just get through those. Arvid says that we can blame Bomber for their lateness.
Always.
Thank you. Always blame Bomber. Andrew says, 30 years on, the average person had 5 people they could call in an emergency. Follow-up. Average was 3. The mode most common responses was 0. The mode. Most common responses was 0. Most had no one they could call on in an emergency. Yeah, there's some of those facts out there. Like there's that fact that if for a huge percentage of the population, I don't know if this is an American stat or not, that if they got a bill for $400, they were screwed. Like they didn't have a tolerance of $400, and they would be in significant trouble. Like it's something like 40% of the population or something. It was a big number and a small amount of dollars to get there. So
yeah, I think when it comes to that, when the concept of being comfortable and that sort of thing, if you lost your job tomorrow, if you had no income coming in, how long before you're on the streets is often measured in weeks, not months.
Yeah,
that's terrifying.
Yeah. There it is. There we go. I've just found it. It is American, and it says, thank you. No, I don't want to sign up, Guardian, to your situation. So I'm going to go back to Google because Google scraped it. There we go. Nearly 40% of all Americans would struggle to cover a $400 emergency expense. There you go. So it is 40% and 400. Ryzen says MPs elected before 1999 and their spouses get a travel rebate, which is Ruth's case is 75%. I'm sure she's welcome for the Canadian. I'm sure she's welcome for the Canadian skiing trip, so we're helping to pay for it. Yeah, and I think before 94 is when they get their full pension and all that kind of stuff. And I think Winston may be the only person left in, because he's 107, who still has that. I think every other one was after 94. I think. I could be wrong with that, but I think. Lurchie says, when fate gives you more than you could possibly need, build lower walls and longer tables. Like that. That's very nice. James says, the wealthy need to support the rest of the country. Otherwise, they'll end up living in a country they don't want to live in. Just paying money to paraphrase your guest. Such a good thing to hear. Thank you for paraphrasing our guest. And one last one. Flying Kiwi Fist. They claim that billionaires have worked hard for their wealth. I have yet to see what a $1 billion worth of time and effort looks like from a single person. I mean, the thing about that is it depends what you clarify as work and hard. You know, you hear about stories like, the Mark Cubans of this world who have designed, and their programmers at heart, so they've done all that thing behind the scenes and they've worked for a decade, and then it's been picked up and blown up. But look, I'm actually not here to slam the Mowbrays. I know you probably are, Chewie. But my understanding is they basically developed a water balloon that you could fill from a tap. That was their first thing that went gangbusters. And then everything else.
So they improved humanity by inventing a balloon.
And then everything else kind of sprung from that. I take back
everything I said about them.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. There's not hard work necessarily there. But I have to be. I choose to be fair. I don't have to be. I don't really know their story well enough to deride it too much. I'll just deride it from afar. Thanks, Malcolm. That was wick. I'm very pleased that whilst Malcolm was talking, we actually got to learn a bit about some other things like Bumpspace. That's cool. I want to know more about Bumpspace. This is very cool.
This is the sort of thing, whenever you hear about people with an entrepreneurial mind, right? As it's almost a nothing word now. So it's always something that the grifters and the influencers use. I'm an entrepreneur, and it's taken away from that word. And when you see someone like Malcolm, who is obviously running that entrepreneurial mind of coming up with new ideas and stuff like that, I found all of the things that he was talking about, like bucket and that sort of thing, to be really interesting. And at its heart, I think when you are talking about a pure entrepreneur of here is a problem, what's an innovative way to solve it? That's it, right? And some people do it for that, for the buzz of solving a problem, for blazing a trail and doing something different. And often there's a lot of money involved in that, because creative ideas are generally worth their time. But then, yeah, when he was talking about it becoming an addiction,
Yeah,
and
that's interesting.
addictions can start as one thing and then morph into the other, right? The buzz might be from solving that problem and creating something from scratch and making it successful. And then that success equals money. So therefore the addiction then becomes money.
And it is-
when you're an addict, what was a buzz last time stops being a buzz, and it's always more. Like, I've seen people in the chat sort of going, oh, so $1 billion is so many oh shit, no, it's not, it's a lot more than that. Fuck, really? There is no moral justification for billionaires. You couldn't convince me. Like, there's more money than anybody can spend, and you're hoarding it. It's either a make-believe number on a balance sheet because it's all shares, or it's realized wealth that you are holding on to rather than doing anything with it.
So let me bring you context to $1 billion, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a bit lower than this, but the last time I looked, like long-term savings were about 4.5%, like just at the bank, nothing special. Maybe they're a bit down from that. If you liquefied everything you had, sold all your share, and you had $1 billion in the bank, that's $45 million a year in interest. So $1 billion at 4.5% is 45 million. That means it's what, nearly 4. It's nearly $1 million a week. It's close to $1 million a week in interest alone to never touch your net worth. So there's a tangible thought as to what $1 billion would be.
You've just got your bank statement and you look at that and you know that you own your house outright. You are looking after everybody you love. I was going to say care about. Have fond feelings for. You could look after all of them. You could just put people on the payroll to just be your Xbox buddy.
Yeah.
You could get real fucking frivolous with it. Buy a sports team, build a castle, private air force. I don't know. At some point you start running out of ideas, and that money is still coming in. It's still coming in, and you can look at that number on that piece of paper, and then you look at the news, and you see injustice, inequality, hunger, war, deprivation, people sleeping on streets, and you go, yeah, I'm going to keep this money. I'm going to keep it for me because I might need it. That's why it's morally unjustifiable.
Here's another example of what $1 billion is. So if you had $1 billion and you put it in the bank at 4.5% interest, you could then use that interest to sponsor the All Blacks with any silly words you wanted.
Diddle.
Yeah. They could be
the Diddle Blacks.
The Diddle All Blacks, sponsored by Diddle. Because I'm looking at the thing, it's about 50 million a year to get that. I mean, it's much more than that. They're about 120 million a year, but that's made up of all the other things as well. So, hey, Mowbrays, how about that? Oh my God, I just had a really bad idea. What about the Zuru All Blacks? Oh my God, that'd be terrible. Sorry.
Don't do that. Why have you done that?
No, I haven't done that.
You know how tech companies love coming up with like product names that are just like nonsense words. Can you imagine an American that has no concept of the word diddle coming up with this new killer app that does something?
Well, it's like Fanny in America.
It's Diddle.
Yeah.
And everybody's using the hot new app, Diddle. You know, and you jump online and diddle yourself. I've lost this train of thought now.
Yeah, I think we're going now.
You could diddle with your friends.
The
I
whole
think is what I'm saying.
The whole chat has turned into 6-year-olds. So look, let's stop.
Thank you.
Pull it all
I'm
back
proving
together.
my worth.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've spoken about this. When everybody harks back to the good old days, when the country used to do great big old things.
2 years ago.
Further back than that.
Okay.
It all links back to when we used to tax the wealthy heavily.
Yeah.
And the wealthy still existed. They were still wealthy. They still drove their big cars and had their big houses and stuff like that. But countries went to the moon. Countries build mass transport systems and energy production schemes and all of that sort of thing. Imagine if we did that. Imagine if it wasn't like, well, the people of Dunedin have to fist fight the people of Nelson because we've only got one hospital to go between you. So battle royale, knife in the middle of the floor.
We'd take that.
Rather than having enough money to go, well, we need to build a new hospital every 10 years somewhere in the country. And we actually made sensible decisions to just keep rolling the infrastructure. Wouldn't that be good? Because we had enough money.
You did very well ignoring all the diddle. Well, there's one of the best
Oh,
ones.
I'm very good at ignoring Diddle.
Diddler on the roof. Like that one. That's a very good one.
I just like when you're going to cut my sensible comment about building a hospital every 10 years and the chat is just going, Diddle underneath in a chain. A chain of diddles, if you'd end on end.
Okay. I think we can move on now.
Good luck. Good luck.
Because
I wish you all the best, Pat.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the three strikes law, shall we? Because that's something that actually became law today. Revived three strikes sentencing law takes effect. I am disheartened how little the mainstream media did on this tonight, especially. I didn't watch 3 News, but I've had a look for their highlights. Couldn't see anything. 1 News had nothing, but they did cover it at 6:01 a.m. this morning. Way brilliant. The revived three strikes law has come into force, targeting repeat offenders of serious, violent, and sexual crimes with progressively harsher penalties. This is something very, very, very important to remember, because I will show you some examples shortly of what happens as people who are not serious, violent, or sexual criminals get caught up in this. It's one of the biggest issues with the three strikes law. I've got some examples from a Stuff article, which I'll show you in a sec. Associate Justice Minister Nicole McKee said those who committed serious, violent, or sexual offences should expect to face increasingly severe consequences. The Sentencing Reinstating Three Strikes Amendment Act 2024 reinstated the regime repealed by the Labour government with changes to make the legislation more workable. McKee described it as a centre pillar in the coalition government's law and order program. New Zealanders have had enough. They want safer streets, safer homes, and a justice system that puts victims first. The law's restoration was detailed in the National Act Coalition Agreement. I want to just divert for a second here, Chewie, and tell a story. Now, I'll tell this story, and I'll be very clear that I'm not giving anyone any advice to do this. When I used to work late night talkback radio, you get a lot of old people phoning up, and because apparently they don't sleep well. And I can remember something had happened to me that day, and I lived in West Auckland, and I'd gone out to go into the shops or something, and I was out for an hour, and I came back, and the door was wide open. The front door was wide open. And I thought, and it's really simple. I would have pulled it behind me. It didn't latch on, it blew open. How was the house? House was fine. Door was open for an hour. Had a lady phone up talking to me about I used to live in a neighbourhood where I could sleep with my windows open. And I said to her, what do you think would happen if you slept tonight with your windows open? And she went, nothing. And I went, yeah. Tend to agree. This idea of fear of safer streets, safer homes. I'm not telling people to sleep with their windows open. I'm not telling people to go to shops and leave your doors open, because things do happen. But things happen disproportionately low to how much these kinds of governments want you to think they're happening. If 1,000 houses tonight went to bed with their front door closed but unlocked, I was going to say one will get robbed. probably none would get robbed, but let's say one would get robbed. Now, when you're the one, we've talked about this before about anecdotal evidence versus data, it's the worst thing in the world, and 100% of that one thing has happened to you, which is why I've said I am not telling someone to sleep with your windows open. But the amount of fear that these kinds of governments put into society that is disproportionate to the reality is a cancer in Western society. New Zealanders have had enough. They want safer streets, safer homes, and a justice system that puts victims first. 99.999 recurring percent of streets and interactions and moments that you're out there are perfectly safe, but they want you to be fearful. I've mentioned this before. That documentary Bowling for Columbine, where they went to South Central Los Angeles where Rodney King was beaten, and it was a lovely leafy street, and they talked about violent crime was trending down, and then there was a professor that Mike, whatever his name was, Michael, what's his name who made that documentary? Big round dude, whatever his name was. Chat will tell me in a sec. Michael Moore said, asked them the question, and the professor or the expert said, yeah, but coverage of violent crime has gone up 600%.
Yeah. I was just going to say.
And that's it. That's it. Finish the story.
I think I've talked about this before, the odd little tangent about why crime is trending downwards. Lead in petrol and paint.
Oh, yeah, this is a story that's been around screwing with people's brains.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before. I don't know if it's a urban myth or if it's reality. We should look into it. But I have heard that before. There's several negative interactions in society that they wonder if it can be tied back to some of the things that were floating around in the air in our society of the era, and that's one of them. Let's just get to the end of the story, shall we? 42 offences, including murder, attempted murder, manslaughter, sexual violation, abduction, aggravated robbery, and the newly added strangulation and suffocation offences qualify for strike. But just remember this, whānau, and I'm not saying this to minimise any of those very serious crimes. The government has taken away the ability for judges, they've either taken it away or they're planning to have nuance, which means what will happen at some stage is something will technically be something, but it will be on the much more minor offence of it. And I'm not downplaying the serious nature to victims, but you then say to someone, does this offence really deserve 20 years in prison? And the answer from 99% of people would be no. If a person convicted of one of these offences for the first time, they receive an official strike warning in their sentence. If they were convicted of a second qualifying offence, they were given a second and final warning and would be sentenced without the chance of parole. If the person is then committed with a third qualifying offence, they would be automatically receive the maximum prison sentence without a parole. McKee said ACT provided for some judicial discretion to prevent. Well, I don't know if that's true. We should look at that because they wanted to take discretion away from the courts. It was one of the cornerstone things they were talking about. To prevent manifestly unjust outcomes, principles and guidelines to aid the court in applying the law were included, as well as limiting benefit for the guilty pleas to spare further trauma to victims and court delays. That sounds slightly like not removing a little bit of due process to me, but we'll get some more details about that. Importantly, previous strike warnings still count if they met the new sentencing threshold, ensuring serious repeat offenders can't escape accountability. The Ministry of Justice has published guidance to help affected individuals and their lawyers check for active strikes. Now, actually, Chewie, why don't you have a crack at that first of all? Then I'm going to go to the Spinoff article might be from 2018, but it gives some examples of what exactly these strikes have been in the past.
One thing I want to bring up is everywhere that has implemented a 3 strikes regime, and like all good crime and punishment policies, this was birthed in the US. Everywhere that it's been tried, including here, last time we did it, it exploded the prison population.
Well, but they want that. This government wants that. They want it to be up by several hundred. That's what their target is.
Absolutely exploded it. Did really have much of an effect on the crime rate? because going to prison, yeah, sure, it might be a little bit of a consequence, but the people that are doing these things don't tend to think about consequences that much. They're not sometimes like normal people, or they're not in normal situations where you pro and con something before you do it. So it doesn't really affect crime rates at all. So why are we doing it?
Yeah. But the reason we're doing it, and I think that this goes back to the idea that this government in particular wants bumper stickers and slogans that they know and have researched will work. Tough on crime. That works. Tough on crime. So it's actually, as long as the slogan works, then that's all they need. All this government needs is for the slogan to work, whether the actual legislation works or not. Because if the slogan works, they get re-elected. It's as simple as that. Let's have a look at some more of these examples. Won't go through all of them. So this is a brief history of New Zealand's most absurd three-strike cases from Spinoff. The most well-known three-strikes case is that of Raven Casey Campbell. The first person to be sentenced for a third strike in New Zealand, Campbell, who earned his first 2 strikes by committing robbery, both aggravated and not, got his third when he groped a female prison guard while serving his second sentence, an offence that constitutes indecent assault. No, I agree, that's not smart. And what a prick. Absolutely. But did that therefore require to a further than 7 years for what he did? Because that's what he got. The 3 strikes in the max, they would call it. A couple of other ones. Take the case of Matthew Barnes, decided just 3 months ago in the Court of Appeal. Last year, then 22-year-old Barnes was convicted along with 3 others of aggravated robbery after they robbed a security guard and punched and kicked him as he lay on the ground. There's the thing as well, though. These aren't necessarily nice people. We're not actually standing up for them. What I'd like to stand up for is the rule of law and to make sensible legislation that helps society rather than harms it. And I suspect this will end up harming society, like it seems to have done in every other situation any kind of 3 strikes law has been brought in. While 2 of his accomplices would be eligible for parole after less than a year, Barnes was made to serve out 2 years and 6 months without parole. Why? Because it was his second strike, which, as the original judge put it, will send you and the others a really additional and harsh message about what these strikes are all about and the real consequences that they can have. Barnes' first strike followed a sexual relationship he had with a then 18, had with a 14-year-old girlfriend. For reasons that are still not clear to me, the judge in that case said the matter came to the attention of police and you were questioned by the police. Barnes was ultimately convicted of sexual connection with a young person aged between 12 and 16. Deciding that jail wasn't appropriate, the judge instead stuck him in home detention for 5 months and slapped on 200 hours worth of community work. Barnes still ended up with his first strike for, quote, serious violent offending. More. I won't do that one, it's too long. Oh, but look at this headline. If you're engaged in another aggravated robbery, whether it's a minor aggravated robbery for $5 or it's a major bank robbery, you must be sentenced to the maximum term of imprisonment unless it would be manifestly unjust. 14 years imprisonment without parole. And I know, look, we know what the counter argument is going to be. Well, don't commit the crime. But sometimes crimes have more to do with, or less to do with willpower, yes or no, more to do with other things, addiction, mental health issues, abuse issues. It's not, we don't live in a world that's black and white. We live in a nuanced world. So having outcomes or legislations that are black and white eventually can lead to a detrimental outcome for society. One of the earliest 3 strike cases that caused outrage was that of a 69-year-old man suffering from Parkinson's and dementia who groped a fellow patient at his home for the disabled in 2010. The man's lawyer argued that the behaviour was a side effect of both his condition and the medication he was taking, something that isn't unheard of. Regardless, the man whose condition was so bad he needed help dressing, bathing and getting out of bed and had to be helped into court by 2 officers, was charged with 2 counts of indecent assault, facing a possible first strike.
I don't know about you, but I feel safer already knowing that he is off the streets.
Well, we're going to play a clip with David Seymour, and one of the questions that Ryan Bridges asks him is, how much safer is this going to make us? It's very intangible. Sorry, what you were going to say?
anything that removes the ability for a judge to judge should instantly be thrown away. What's the point of having a judge in that case? Shall we just have a if this then this way of sentencing someone?
A vending machine. Just pull that lever and then take out the...
Just a fucking flow chart straight to the gallows. It's...
And also, listen, this government has said it's not doing cultural reports, right? But they're saying we want to take discretion away from judges. But in this instance, they're saying, we want to give discretion to the judges. The story is not lining up, right? And when the story doesn't line up, I get filled with dread. And I'm not filled with dread for me. I'm filled with dread for the vulnerable in society. I'm filled with dread for people who are going through things that could be a contributing factor towards bad decisions they're making. We don't live in a black and white world. We live in a world of greys and nuance. Therefore, a black and white outcome when it comes to crime is never going to be the best outcome, in my opinion. How about this one? In another case, an 18-year-old boy got a first strike for assault after he accidentally injured a shopkeeper while trying to nick a couple of bottles from a liquor store. There was also the case of a 21-year-old who racked up 2 strikes after stealing $68, various items of clothing, a lighter and a cell phone from victims he kicked and punched. The judge warned him that when you next steal a hat or a cell phone or a jacket or a skateboard, you will be sentenced to 14 years imprisonment without parole. Now, again, I know what some people are going to say. They're going to go, don't steal then. This is not the world we live in. That's like telling the alcoholic, don't drink then. Just stop. Just stop drinking. We don't live in a world of black and white. Black and white outcomes, especially when it comes to things like imprisonment, I think my honest held belief is we'll end up harming society more than it will help. Chewie.
Yeah, harming and costing. You know, we've spoken before about how long it costs per year to keep someone in prison locked up. Like, it flies in the face of, and I'm banging a dead horse here, it flies in the face of all research and evidence. This is not a policy that is going to reduce crime. It is a policy that is going to blow out our prison numbers. It is a policy that is going to cost the New Zealand taxpayer far more than any other option. The problem that the government is trying to solve is not crime. The problem that the government is trying to solve is we want to be the government. We don't want to be opposition. And this seems to fucking work.
Getting re-elected.
So we are going to ignore everything. Like, people have a hard on for crime and punishment.
Yeah.
Like, if it was on the ballot and had the death penalty, they'd fucking go that far as well. People want to see bad people punished, whether it works or not.
Well, I mean, like, the thing that we just said, though, as well, bad people. I mean, people who have come to the end of their rope and have no other choices. I mean, you can use the silly example about when you think about, you know, the 1800s, stealing a loaf of bread to feed your family. What's the equivalent of that today? I don't know. Bad people? Maybe. Maybe not. Sick people? Maybe. Maybe not. We don't live in a black and white world. So therefore we can't have a black and white justice system.
We don't want cultural reports because the word cultural is scary for some people. But we don't want to have anything that engenders any sort of sympathy for somebody's situation. We don't want that as a factor. And I get that there are a lot of people that'll write letters to the fucking Herald or their local newspaper about how judges have got it wrong because they don't think someone's childhood has any bearing on how they turn out as an adult. You know, you look at some of those cultural reports that came out, people with some of the most horrific childhoods, the people that they should have been able to trust the most, did the most damage. They never got the setup that any functioning human got to be a productive, stable member of society. And then they come crashing into the crime and punishment. You know, maybe they got no help from the state. Maybe they got the wrong help from the state. Maybe they were hurt by the state.
Mm.
And yet when people look at, like, I'm the same as any other normal person. I read the court news, and maybe there's an interesting story in here. And you see these horrible things, if it bleeds, it leads, it gets people's attention. And they read the horrible thing that the person has done, and they make a judgment on that person that they have never met based on what's printed in the paper. And there used to be the cultural report. There might be a mention of that they had they bounced from foster homes, they were sexually assaulted, they were drinking and smoking weed at the age of 9, out of school, all of these things that kind of paint the picture of why this person did this horrible thing. And then the judge is gone, and I think this is the mistake, right? The judge makes his judgment, 14 years in jail. But I'm going to give you a discount because of your cultural report. And I've always believed that the use of that language, a discount, really, really skewed how people received that information.
Yeah. Look, all of that, and then put on top of it how the justice system already treats Māori in a very different way from everybody else. Like, and the very easy statistics that anyone can look up, and if there's any crunchies out there, you can do the work yourself rather than asking me to provide you the evidence, that more Europeans smoke cannabis, more Māori get arrested for smoking cannabis. Europeans get sentenced at half the rate that Māori do when committing the same crime with the same background. Like, it's unquestionable. Then bring 3 strikes into it. It's like, okay, so if there's something tipping on the edge of a strike or not, if they're Māori, definitely strike. If they're non-Māori, probably doesn't quite reach the threshold. We already live in that system, and that's something to always think about. Anyway, Chewie, let's keep going, because someone wants to know if Tim Yago got a consequence. Yeah, well, there you go. It's in there. And I like what James has said, actually. James, it's an interesting way to think about it. They're not tough on crime. They're tough on criminals, not the same thing. Yeah, it's like that whole thing about, I always think about the pro-life group. They're not really pro-life, they're pro-life birth. Because after the kid's born into poverty, they couldn't give a fuck about them, but they want to make sure that thing slides out in the birthing canal. That's the thing that matters most of all. Others, 3 strikes is a law to keep the poor in fear. And Vanda Amor, isn't it interesting that we pay to keep someone in prison opposed to what we pay as a benefit to keep women and children warm, fed and watered? Well, I mean, that's the whole conversation around the ambulance at the top of the cliff, ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, isn't it? The bottom of the cliff is literally prison. You're putting things in place to helping these kids on a path to prison. That's the kind of policy that this government is ripping out of the legislative books at the moment, and the kinds of groups that are being cancelled. School lunches is a perfectly good example. And then they're like, well, we have nothing to do with shaping of kids. If it takes a village to raise a child, then New Zealand can be seen as a big village. The government can be seen as people in charge, or certainly interacting and influencing that village. And what you're doing for the vulnerable at the moment, I had a conversation with someone just today, and we were talking about this government, and I was like, well, let's not go down we don't need to go down the controversial conversation around what they're doing to trans kids. Let's just talk about other vulnerable. Let's talk about the disabled. Talk to anyone working in the disabled community right now, and they will tell you how much harder they're doing it under this government than the last. We don't have to get what is seen by some as controversial around this. We have empirical evidence that the vulnerable are struggling more under this government than they did under the last. Now, could there be changes from what the last did? Well, nothing's perfect. But for me personally, if I have to err on the side of the vulnerable being looked after or the vulnerable being shat on, I'd rather lean towards being looked after. If it means that the vulnerable are taking advantage of New Zealand by 3% versus the other way where they're now going behind, or they're falling behind by 3% every month, I'd rather be taken advantage of for the 3% than them falling behind and their life getting harder by 3%. But that's just how I swing, Chewie.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, everything that we talk to comes around to this eventually, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't it? That the less fortunate, the less yeah, just less fortunate. That works. I was going to come up with another way to describe it, but that's it. Sometimes life deals you a shitty hand. Maybe the people that birthed you are horrible monsters, and you're doomed from that point on. So should we just walk away at that point? Sorry, kid, you're fucked.
Yeah, your problem.
Might as well get it over and done with.
You chose to be born into that situation. You take full responsibility. Up to you.
But no, we can't do it. Well, we know how to fix this. I'll be honest, kid. We know how to fix this. But some people wanted to stack money. They wanted to have a competition with their other rich mates who could make the biggest money stack. And unfortunately, you're cursed. You're doomed. This is the hand that the world gave you, and the Mowbrays don't want to help. So off you trot.
Hey, let's get into the last story of the day, because the last story is just a video from Herald Now this morning. David Seymour does talk about 3 strikes, but they start the conversation talking about school attendance. Yeah, how do I feel about this? It's a bit of a blah topic, actually, because of course they go back to look at 2022 and 2021 and how bad attendance was there. They don't mention, of course, that at the time the government was saying if you have COVID, stay home for a week. But they start talking about it, and of course David Seymour sends up a couple of fireworks to say how they're moving forward, and it's a good idea. But let's have a bit of a listen.
I want to start with the numbers from school attendance. So term 1 2025, if you're just joining us, regular school attendance, 65.9%. That's an increase of almost 5 percentage points from term 1 of 2024, which itself was a almost 7% increase on 2023. David, does this mean your approach is actually working?
I think it means that we're coming out of a real low. We had a much higher number, I think about 66 in 2020 and about 70% in 2019. So let's be clear, this is a recovery from COVID. Yes, I would like to think that some of the things that the government's done, publishing more regular data, doing more advertising, lots of messaging from ministers in the government, going and asking mayors to help advocate. There's a huge number of things we're doing before we start up the 140 million of extra attendance service. So we're really throwing everything at this. But let's be honest, 65.9% of students attending regularly means 34.1% of students did not attend regularly last term. And that's why we've got to keep pushing on this. I can't stress it enough. At the end of the day, our society's success will depend on how much knowledge we pass from one generation to the next. And the strongest indicator of that is how many people actually go to school. Because while it's difficult to learn at school, and look, I've got some school reports that prove that, it's impossible if you're not at school.
Do you want?
Yeah, I agree with Rogers. At this moment, when he had this interview, he had been acting Prime Minister for 25 minutes. And I wonder if that had anything to do with a strangely measured response from Mr. Seymour. He actually said, well, it's a COVID tale, and he never went, thanks to Labour. He just went, it's a COVID tale and we're getting out of it. And yeah, I kind of felt that as well. I guess that's kind of why I went, it feels a bit blah. It's not bad or anything. It just feels like, it doesn't really feel like David Seymour. I don't know, maybe he hasn't had his coffee or something to blame Labour yet, but it is what it is.
I mean, my takeaway from this, who's solving school attendance? Well, ministers are working very hard. Ministers aren't solving class attendance. Teachers are. There's no kid sitting at home going, I'm not going to go to school, and then sees David Seymour going on the news and going, we're not happy with kids not going to school. Oh, fuck, well, I don't want to disappoint David. I better go back to school. It's not. It's the social workers. It is the community support. It is the teachers keeping track of who's potentially falling through the cracks. Those people are doing the hard yards, not David Seymour.
Yeah, I think there's one more question about attendance.
Worry that there's a cohort of kids out there who aren't going to school, haven't listened to the messaging. COVID's over.
Do we really think that the kids are sitting there listening to any messaging, quote unquote, coming from the beehive. It makes it sound like, there's all those kids that are listening to the messaging. What about those ones that are sitting around the back of the bike shed smoking because they refuse to listen to their daily update from the 9th floor of the beehive? What about those ones? And by the way, I cut it a bit short there, but Chewie, your favourite line came out. COVID's over, apparently.
Yeah, I was
Aren't
just
going
going
to school,
say.
haven't listened to the messaging. COVID's over. But they're still not coming regularly.
Over.
I mean, is there a potential that we hit a wall here?
Well, I just read Jacinda Ardern's book over the weekend, and I don't think she has any idea how much impact the really blunt way she shut down the country and shut down schooling has had on.
That measured approach disappeared pretty fucking quickly. He probably just woke himself up and went, oh shit, hang on, I had a chance to slam them, I didn't. I'll go doubly hard on this answer.
Our society, and yes, I am concerned that there are students who were, the ones that the more than half weren't regularly attending back in 2022. They have a lot of catching up to do, and what I'd say is, yes, we got a goal of getting to 80% regular attendance by the end of the decade. I hope that we're going to exceed that.
Yeah, so do I.
It's also true that there's a lot of catch up to be done.
Hey, 3 strikes.
Yeah, so we'll end on that first of all. We'll go back to the 3 strikes conversation. But yeah, there you go. So slightly measured at the start, back to form by the end.
And yeah, a second interview with a government minister in the right-wing press where COVID is over. Like, these guys are just utterly clueless. I don't think Ryan Bridge... I have a suspicion that Ryan Bridge probably isn't a public health expert.
Yeah, I think.
He might not be keeping tabs on the wastewater readouts. He might not know what the hospitals are dealing with. It's just remarkable that David could smash out that book in a weekend. Mustn't have anything else on.
I think that's his reading time. Remember last weekend he talked about, I read a book over the weekend before I went into negotiations with Christopher Luxon. I think that's when his fiance wants to see the back of him, he reads a book. That's what I'm thinking.
And look, I'm going to refer to another story from the news cycle today about Labour ministers swearing at David Seymour under their breath, going, oh, for fuck's sake. That is the most relatable thing I have heard out of Parliament for ages, and I'm stunned that this is the first time it's been picked up. I can't believe that it doesn't happen every day that David answers a question and everybody just goes, oh, for fuck's sake.
I was wondering as well, and I've been looking for it while I've been here. He talked about the second shutdown there. Most of what the government did was supported unanimously. I haven't found it, so I can't say this, but I wonder if Seymour and ACT voted for that second shutdown. Is that something they even needed to do? Because there was lots of stuff at the start that there was 100% vote. They were all voting for it because it was COVID. But towards the end, they got a bit more kind of bitchy about it. When they saw people weren't that happy with it, they became populists about it. I mean, they weren't popular to saving lives, but they were popular to the people bitching and moaning. I haven't found that answer, so I'm not saying he did vote for it, or I can't even remember. Did they need to vote for the second shutdown, or was that the power that the government of the time had because of the once in a lifetime pandemic? I'm not sure. I'll research that and see if I can find out some more about it. But let's have a look at the 3 strikes conversation that Mr. Seymour has as well.
Comes into force today. For those who are watching this broadcast this morning, how much safer are we going to be? How many have you done?
It's actually a very good question. Very good question, very good way, because obviously we want a tangible outcome. So the tangible outcome is safer. And remember, from the previous story, I didn't come back to it, serious, violent and sexual offenders. The problem with the last time they did this is there was people getting caught up in it that weren't violent or sexual or serious violent or sexual offenders, like the story about the guy in prison pinching the prison guard's ass, whatever it is. Unacceptable, not the right thing to do, but you wouldn't call that a violent sexual offence. You'd punish it according to within the system, but that got elevated to a sexual assault. And he got his 3rd strike, 7 extra years in prison.
This morning, how much safer are we going to be? How many have you done the numbers? How many assaults won't we have because of this law?
Look, people can model and create numbers like that. I'm always a bit sceptical of them because there's so many other things that change. What we focus on is what we as a government can change. And from today, if you commit a serious violent or sexual offence, there's a list of 46 different offences. If you commit one of those, the first time you get sentenced normally. If you do it again, another sexual or violent offence, you get sentenced normally, but with no parole. So none of this only sitting 1/3 of your sentence. If you do a third strike, then you get the maximum sentence allowable in the Crimes Act with no parole. So what we're saying is that if you're someone who gets out there, you follow the law, you're trying to make the most of your life for yourself and your family and your friends and your community, you deserve to be safe. If you commit a crime, okay, that's bad and you'll be punished. But if you keep offending, we're just going to keep ramping those penalties up because the rights of ordinary New Zealanders to be safe going about their lives goes well above any right you might have to a soft sentence.
All right. You enjoying the job so far?
25 minutes of being Deputy Prime Minister. That's what I'm sorry, Acting Prime Minister. Just to wrap up that on the COVID response, I found a story that says COVID-19 coronavirus National Act respond to Auckland lockdown move seems to be that David Seymour criticised the government for putting Auckland into another lockdown. So we've got to be fair, and I asked the question, I found the answer. Seymour said it was only a matter of time before an outbreak forced another lockdown. He called New Zealand a, quote, sitting duck, saved by luck, citizen cooperation and geographic isolation. I mean, yeah. That's probably fair. Is that bad though? The government did not take the opportunity to strengthen our defences with better testing and contact tracing, as the Prime Minister claimed. Instead, it was pinned its hopes on a vaccine whilst inviting the Wiggles through MIQ. We must hope that the government's testing and tracing can isolate this outburst before damaging extended lockdowns harms livelihoods. So it sounds like he's in the era he was speaking out both sides of his mouth. He was going, government's not doing enough. What are they doing? Don't do that. That pretty much sounds like what he was saying. He was
positioning himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you just also mentioned something, Chewie, and to wrap up the show, if I can find my freaking mouse, where's it going? What happens when you got 5 screens?
Is it on your
to
desk
scroll
there?
between? Yeah, it is. I caught a mouse in the thing the other day. You might want to see this because you've just sort of mentioned it. So let's bring it up. David Seymour Scrutiny Week, talking regulatory standards bill, and this is the thing you just talked about when the utterance of the word fuck happens, but he turns into a smarmy school
Little
boy,
bitch.
like a little bitch. He turns into a little bitch. Let's have a listen to this interaction.
Principles against standards bill, that we will have a new set of criteria or principles against which...
Well, hang on. The mission of the department started a year ago. I mean, you said yourself that in respect of pay equity, you didn't need to consult on it. Now, that's a total contradiction of your own principles. Surely you don't think it appropriate that we don't consult on things that don't involve private property.
I beg your pardon?
Well, you said in the media that it was unnecessary to consult on pay equity because it didn't affect private property rights.
No, I've never said that.
If we look at something like the pay equity changes, that the $13 billion in savings there, you breached both of those, didn't you? You rammed it through under urgency. It was retrospective, and there was no consultation. So wouldn't this have completely breached
So
that?
let me ask you this question. Can
you answer my one first?
Yeah. Where in that law did we in any way restrict people's use and exchange of private property? All we did
Where
was
in that law did you consult people?
we didn't have to.
On Guy and Espiner, you said, when asked why you didn't consult, you said it didn't interfere with the free use and exchange of property.
No, I haven't said that.
There you go. There you go, Joe. That wasn't the full clip I was thinking of, but that's another one for you. So that was from Kiwi Pulse as well. All right. Well, is there anything you would like to get to wrap up the show? Because we are coming towards the end of the show. There is some chats in there that you've starred. Anything else?
Well, we'll go through that. I'm not going to add to the pile and add another topic in there. Coming back from the top of the show, $1 billion is 1 million a day for 3 years.
Yeah, that's about right. Because like I said, 20 billions is more than 54 years. 20 times 3 would be 60. So exactly.
$1 billion is just an unfathomably obscene number when you're talking about personal wealth. Ruru says, did the sums from last night. If a life is worth 12.5 million and without lockdown we would have had 20,000 deaths, that equals $250 billion. A government spent less than 100 billion on total COVID response. So a good deal. That's a good return on investment. Talking about 3 strikes. Hear that, criminals? There's a 3 children limit.
Chronic Bucky. I don't recognise that name. Is Chronic a newbie? Hey, Chronic. Welcome to the show.
Nick says, at Chewie, please refer to cultural reports as Section 27 reports, as they can be used for everything for a judge to consider, including disability issues. This is a great criticism. I, of course, have used the language that the press always use about this. In the media, it's always referred to as a cultural report. And you are exactly right. They shouldn't have done it. Because people's minds go to a certain place when they hear the word cultural. Might as well call them ethnic reports, maybe. Well, that's how it works, Pat.
No,
There's a
I
lot
gotcha.
of dumb racists out there. And Mr. Arvid's here. Maybe the ACT policy is go to school or Timmy will give you a visit.
Oh, no. I've got one thing I want to
What's
show
wrong
you.
with Timmy from South Park? Lots of
No,
people
no,
like
no,
that character.
no,
What are you
no,
talking about?
no. Timmy!
Oh,
I want to show
Pat,
Yes, what?
one thing first. You know how people comment on our YouTube videos, and people that comment on videos are sometimes insane?
Oh, yeah, mostly, aren't they? I know when I comment, I'm always insane.
Someone tagged me in and said, hey, you guys need to do a story on Tommy Robertson because he's just like Te Pāti Māori
What?
and being persecuted
Oh, my God.
by the elites for just making a film. And I have never heard just such a false comparison and such an underselling of who Tommy Robinson is. So, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Or if we do it, we're not going to do it in a way that commenter will like.
You said do. I'm going to show you one more clip because this is really, 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 really funny. And this is from your mate and mine, Jordan Rivers. It's a very, very funny stitch he put together. Enjoy this, people. You ready for it? Listen carefully because you got to get Louise Upston's bit at the start.
From July 2027,
2027? Fuck you guys worried about that for? the election's in 2026, mate. If I were you, I wouldn't worry about 2027. You guys fucking just book a holiday if I was you.
from July 2027.
I thought that was very, very, very funny from old mate Jordan. Hey, look, while we're here,
That's a great video.
let me just remind you, a few people have taken us up on this so far because of our New Year's holiday this Friday, Māori New Year. We are doing a buy one hoodie, get one t-shirt half price. Buy one hoodie, get one t-shirt, any t-shirt half price at bhnshop.nz. Thank you to the people who've already purchased this month. In fact, we were pressing some t-shirts as we talked. If you're waiting on some women's refuge product, for example, that'll be coming out on the couriers tomorrow. And for the rest of you, pretty much everything we've got up there, we now have in stock with all those colours and stuff as well. Buy a hoodie, get a t-shirt for half price, bhnshop.nz. All the ways of doing it are there. The discount code is Matariki. Pardon me. Use that. And get yourself a half-price t-shirt when you buy yourself a hoodie at bhnshop.nz at Chewie. And that's it for us, I think. I think this is the shortest show of the last 14 months, I think, actually. Probably not. Now,
yes, well, I got scolded on Monday for a ridiculously long show because I was going mental over Ruth Richardson. So, you know.
A nice early one. Reminder to you guys, on Thursday we are likely to have at least 3 live streams. About 10:45 in the morning is when the new numbers for GDP comes out, and Craig Rennie will probably be doing a locked out live stream at 10:45 in the morning. At 6 p.m. We have Tanya Waikato, who is going to have one guest, Dr. Carwyn Jones, with her. Carwyn is part of the authorage, is that what we call it? More than one author, with Sir Geoffrey Palmer and one of the witnesses for the regulatory standards submissions. So 6 p.m. Thursday night, you're going to have Tanya and Carwyn here doing a BHN special. There are probably some other guests still to have in that as well, but we just need to finalise them before we announce them. And of course, 9 p.m. that night, BHN will be back. I know it'll be a downgrade by 9 p.m, but you know. And of course, Friday is Matariki. So there's a holiday. I don't know if the kids are doing a show this Friday. Technically, it's a public holiday. Guess they can if they want to. And that's about it. That's about it, actually. Yep. So we'll remind you of... Oh, and also, Melanie Nelson is joining us tomorrow night. Melanie Nelson is joining us tomorrow night to talk the RSB, Regulatory Standards Bill. So Melanie Nelson tomorrow night. Thursday, we've got multiple people on through the whole day. So this will be a perfect time that if you haven't hit the notification bell, after you've subscribed, obviously, smash that bell.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Because when we go live on YouTube with Locked Out will not go to the Facebook page. It'll only go to YouTube. Then you'll know when it comes up. The 2 episodes of BHN on Thursday, 6 p.m. and 9 p.m, they will go to all the normal BHN places. And maybe some others as well. Tanya might put it onto her own Facebook page as well. We'll figure that out through the week. All right. Is there anything else, Joe? You were supposed to say no. You're going to say no. There's nothing.
Shut the fuck up and I'll be real quick. Just check that subscription bell right now. Just hit it. Hit the bell. And while you're there, because it's right there as well, hit the like button. Yes. Yeah, that's the sound it makes. Test it. I guarantee it. The other thing is RSB submissions close on Monday at 1 p.m. 1 p.m. Not midnight, 1 p.m. I've left my megaphone in the car.
Last time you used it, you got told off, bro.
I did.
Hey? You got told off. You've had a couple of tell-offs. You should be careful. Someone's going to get told they can't come and play anymore.
That's true.
All right, Fano. Been a good one.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, neither this way or that, and will be analyzed by what Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's big hairy news.
I don't really have anything to add, Chewie. Got anything you want to mention before we head off for the night?
I am free of thought.
Okay. All right, team. Love you to bits. Hug and kisses on all your pink bits. And we will see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Talking
Suits
RSB
you, sir.
over the next 2 nights. Hooroo!
Jets, fam.